All right, minasan konnichiwa, and welcome to the Board Game Dojo, where we use science and history to learn more about board games and the people who play them. I think I might have to change that for today. Let me try that again. Minasan konnichiwa, and welcome to the Board Game Dojo, where we use communication to learn more about board games and the people who develop them. I cannot be more excited to have my first guest that I will ever have on the show, and hopefully not the last, but I guess we're going to see how this one goes. He has called himself the editor and developer at Portland Game Collective, which is a phenomenal company who put out last year's Bridge City Poker. They are currently fulfilling 535. And in fact, I just got my shipping notification for it today, so I'm excited about that one. And have already announced that they are going to be releasing the long out of print classic Trick Taker Haggis, and the notoriously hard to get and kind of annoying to paste up Trick Takers, Ryan Campbell. Ryan, thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate you taking the time out to join us.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to be here and to be able to talk about all these games that you're mentioning here. I know you're excited and I'm just excited as well.
And then I'm going to say just before we get too far into it, that this is going to be available on YouTube and on whatever podcast player that you are using. And I will put a link to the other media into the show description, episode description. So if the other medium is more your style and you're only a subscriber of one of those things, well, wait, first of all, what are you doing? Go subscribe to the other thing. But you can check it out at your preferred medium. So let's just get it out of the way, because I think it's the most important question that everybody is wondering. Ryan, what are the names of your dogs? How old are they and what species?
Yes, so I do have two dogs, and I know in preparation for this recording, I had to make sure that they were in another room because they do love to bark and make recording things very difficult. So the two of them, there are Diego and River, and they are around 6 and 5 years old. Not 100% sure. We did rescue both of them when they were around 1.5 years old.
Oh, wow.
But they are both Chihuahua mixes. So again, very yappy, very loud. So it can be problematic, but they are very cute and absolutely love to be pampered.
You sent me photos of them before, and they're so cute. They're so cute. I might have to find a way to post a picture of them somewhere so that the audience can see them. But more into getting into the crux of, I think, why you're here and why hopefully the listeners are here as well. First of all, where do you want to start? Do you want to start more on the personal questions or more on the PGC questions? Because I guess they overlap into both, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think each one kind of intersects with each other. So kind of wherever you want to direct them is fine with me.
Sure. Well, I mean, well, let's start with let's go back before PGC then. At least I assume so. How did you get into gaming in the first place? What is your gaming story, I suppose?
Yeah, it's always a great question. Obviously, with everybody, it's always slightly different. Of course, there's always the, growing up as a kid with the family. What did my parents and one of my family introduce to me? We always played Trouble, Sorry, kind of those Monopoly, style type Parker Brothers games.
Oh, yeah.
Those classics. And then in college is when I started to get into the more, mainstream hobby type games, but still gateway games, Risk, Ticket to Ride, Carcassonne, things like that. So it was probably 2012 when I really got into the hobby, which was around the college years. But I'd say the deep dive was probably around 2016 when I moved to Pittsburgh, which is where I currently live now. When I moved here, the local game store to me, Games Unlimited, was a 3-minute walk from where I lived, which was super great, amazing.
I don't know if that's good or dangerous.
It was a little bit of both for sure. Because I used to work downtown in Pittsburgh, and the bus that I would take home was on the bus line that went from where I lived and into Games Unlimited. So I'd usually take the stop right before, go and drop by Games Unlimited and browse and talk with the people there, and ultimately probably buy something, which was always bad, but always great. So
c'est la vie. That just happens.
Yeah. So that was certainly the push forward that kind of got me into the hobby, like aggressively. Having a game store so close to me made it really easy to do.
So was there something that led you to go from being into games to joining a company that develops games? Because where's the path that it was there? And from now on, I think can I call it PGC, or do you want me to call it the full name? Is there a different acronym you guys use that's
No,
like makes me sound cool?
no. PGC is perfect. Yeah, Portland Game Collective. To simplify it, PGC is perfectly fine. So it's certainly a mouthful otherwise. It's actually kind of a funny story how I ended up becoming a part of PGC and how I met Lee, kind of the half owner of the company. So obviously, again, as I said, going to my local game store and getting bigger into the hobby, then of course led me down to, searching on the internet and trying to find other people that were a part of this and trying to find other people that I might be able to play games with. And looking into the trick taking and card game world is what sort of pushed me to that, because while Games Unlimited was obviously a great store, they didn't really have a lot of what I'm now into at this point, which is the Japanese trick taking games and things like that. So there is on Reddit a specific trick taking games subreddit. And
Yep.
At one point, somebody on there had messaged, "Show me your pictures of all your trick-taking games. Show us your collection. Let's see what you have." And one person, spoiler, was Lee.
I was like, I think I know this.
Yeah, they took a picture of all of their games, and Bridge City Poker was one of the games that was on there. And this was back in, I want to say, August of 2021.
So fairly recent.
Yeah. So, but before the Kickstarter of Bridge City Poker had even come about. So nobody had this game, wasn't actually out available to the public, but this game was in their picture. And so I asked, where did you get that? How did you get a hold of it? I'm very curious. And again, at this point, that person was Lee, the designer of the game, and had said, actually, I'm the designer. This is my game. It's a prototype copy. And I'm so glad that you noticed it. Like, that's so amazing. It's coming to Kickstarter in a few months. I would love for you to be able to play test it if you have a chance. And at that point, he sent me a link to the Playing Cards IO room. And I was able to play a game with him and a couple other people a couple days later. And I immediately fell in love with it. And at that point, told him that I'm on board. I love this game. I want to make a print and play version, because at the time, being a smaller company that PGC was, it's harder to ship games outside of the US. It's a little bit, when there's only 2 or 3 people, it's harder to get this game to more people. And when the Kickstarter went live, there wasn't really an option besides just getting the game. And I had asked him if he'd be okay with making a print and play copy. And he said yes. So I helped him make that. And it just kind of led from there. I started DMing him. And eventually it just became hey, do you want to keep helping me do this? And I said, yeah. So yeah, super cool.
All based on a curiosity. That it's amazing. And if you are interested, the listeners, if you are interested in meeting some people that are really into trick takers and things, PGC actually hosts a phenomenal Discord that I'm on. Ryan's on. Lee, the person that we keep mentioning, is on there, and I'll put a link to that Discord down below, because there's always a community chatting around it. There's always people looking to play games and things like that, and I think it's a phenomenal community. That's actually how I got in touch with Ryan here today. So yeah. Well, that's amazing though. So you talk about that it's hard to get games outside of the US, but now your latest Kickstarter actually is you doing the complete opposite. Is you're bringing a game from outside the US into it. And it's a game that a lot of people from the US have not been able to get. It's actually an older design by the same person as Dog Tag Trick, which is another trick-taking favorite. So how exactly does that go? I mean, because just that one designer has a huge catalog. Now put on top of it all the games that are in Japan, South Korea, Taiwan. They all love trick takers over there. They all love card games. So How do you decide on what games to bring in, and what does that process look like?
Yeah, that so honestly, it's kind of a pretty straightforward answer. And honestly, it's a game that we love. We want to show it off to more people. So the game that you're sort of mentioning here is 535,
Hmm.
and Kenichi Kabuki has made plenty of games, and 535 is one that we felt wasn't getting enough love overall. Obviously, there are
Oh,
still plenty of people that are enjoying this game, so I don't want to make it sound like nobody's is in love with it, because clearly, just from our bringing it over in making it available to the English market has shown so much support for it. But that's kind of our idea is we really want to continue to bring these games that while they're originally getting produced in the Japanese market and getting smaller print runs from smaller publishers or just the designer who's making their own hand made copies and seeing how many people keep asking, where can I buy this game? Where can I buy this game? How do I get a hold
hmm
of it?
hmm
And just it's always heartbreaking to be like, oh, it's not available. So the fact that we can make it available again is amazing. And I think that's what we are trying to do as PGC as a publisher is locate those games that we know a lot of people love but are having a hard time trying to find. And so that's where 535 comes into play is it's a game that I know Lee specifically even made a challenge for himself to play it 535 times, which
And
is so
how's that
many.
going?
I think he's at like 67 or something right now, so still
Very close.
far away. Yeah, yeah. But the fact that like that's a thing that he wants to do because this game is that good and wants to be able to show it off to other people to maybe inspire them to make a challenge to play it 535 times would be super cool. So to try and answer that question in a simplified way is it's again whatever game that we are really enjoying and we feel like deserves the love for more people is what we're looking to publish and I think 535 fit that perfectly.
And I think 535 is such an interesting game because like for like living in Japan, usually am able to find a used copy somewhere. And so I've introduced this to a lot of new people. And it's just so free. There's so many things you can do with it. And it made me wonder about, okay, so Bridge City Poker was the first release from PGC, and it's not a like difficult to grasp game. We're not talking about like Glory to Rome. We're not talking about a Vito Lacerda game here, but it definitely has some like powers that can make, make the game just kind of turn on its head and can be kind of like for new players that have never played a shedding game before, it can be kind of a little bit. But for 535, I think it's one of the most approachable climbing shedding games that there is. Is that something that you guys look at when you're like, okay, well, we already have kind of one that's, works for newbies, but isn't there. And then next we're going to do, 535 because it's just so good for new people to introduce them to the hobby that we love. Is that something you think about or not really?
No, I think in some way it is because as far as Bridge City Poker goes, which was of course the first game that Portland Game Collective had made, the idea of Bridge City Poker was to sort of be an introduction to trick taking and climbing shedding games all together
Mm.
because it mashes all three of those style of games into one game, which is fantastic. And I will say, I mean, as I mentioned in my story of how I met Lee, the Bridge City Poker was already designed before I met him. So I had little development or touches in regards to that game. But as far as kind of going from there and what we wanted to pick as our next games, I was able to be a part of, which was great. But I think that's where 535 was a perfect fit for us because of, like you said, having 535 being a game that has so many options available for what you can play. It's a really good introduction to the climbing shedding game style that people can have, that I think 535 sits very well with Bridge City Poker, in the regards to games that people would look for in these kind of card games.
And for those who don't know what 535 is, and you can help me along with this a little bit because you know, you're probably more qualified to do it than that is. But I think the kind of hook to it, if you will, is that, you know, a typical climber, if I were to play 1-1 and, you know, you would just need to play something higher, and then, you know, we'd go around the circle and maybe I'd play, maybe by the time it gets to me, there'd be like 2 9s on the table. And, you know, for other ones, maybe I couldn't beat that. And so I'd have to pass. But in 535, I could, if I have a 9 in my hand, I could just add to it. And it'd be like I just played 3 9s. And so it just completely opens up the possibilities for this game, because you'll actually get your starting hand and go, is this good or not? We're going to see. We're going to find out shortly. So it's a phenomenal game. I'm so happy that more people are going to get a chance to play it, because I have used it as an introductory game for years. And
yeah, no, I think just the adding aspect makes it so friendly. So as you mentioned, like if there's a pair of 9s on the table, being able to add a single 9 to make it triple 9s is just like, it's mind-blowingly cool. Because normally you have to look at your hands and decide, okay, this has to be a single, this has to be pairs, this has to be a run. And it's like, if you've never played a climbing game before, that can be really daunting, trying to figure out, okay, what do I section off my hand to do? But with 535, the fact that you can beat and add makes it that you don't have to like figure everything out before the hand's even started. You can sort of go on the fly and be like, okay, well, now there's 14s. This 14 I have in my hand wasn't going to pair well with anything. Let's just add it. And maybe you win with the trick with it. And then all of a sudden you can start leading. And yeah, it's very friendly and it's very dynamic and it's great.
yeah, and it really makes it a really fun game for people who are experienced as well, to just see how that develops. But also with new players, because it's just like, okay, hey, don't worry about it. If you can't beat the 2 9s, you know, just add one. It's great. But speaking of which, let's go a little bit off the PGC bandwagon for a sec, because we thought it'd be a great idea, since 535 is fulfilling, to play a little game with you called 535. But instead, we're just going to ask you a category, and we're going to ask for 5 of the first thing, 3 of the second thing, and 5 of the third thing. 535. I know, very clever name. This is why they pay me the big bucks to. Oh wait, no, I'm not monetized at all, so never mind. This is why I'm free, maybe. So let's do
big bucks.
So let's start with the first one. Let's see. 5 games that you cannot live without.
Ooh.
I kind of stole this of like 5 games for Doomsday a little bit, but yeah, no, 5 games you cannot live without.
Okay, no, so that's a great question. Now, I guess before I answer, is that specifically trick-taking card games, or like anything?
Anything. Okay. And let's assume that like you had the number of players you need to play it, and anything like that. You're not like
perfect
buried,
player count.
Yeah, you're not buried solo in some kind of like nuclear fallout somewhere in the thing, and you're just gonna be playing Mage Knight for 20 years.
Yeah.
Probably taking those 20 years to figure out the rules of Mage Knight.
No, that's fair. Yeah. Well, I think first off, Plains of Caledonia. That's an easy answer for me. That is my #1 game of all time. Has been since it came out. I cannot get enough of it. Super excited for the expansion. I don't know if anybody knows, but there's an expansion been announced. I am on the Karma Games Discord server to help playtest and do all that stuff.
Ooh.
Super duper excited to help with that. But yeah, Plains of Caledonia. Easy answer as my first one.
I was just going to ask, though, about like, oh, you saw the announcement then?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I backed that mini, I guess, Kickstarter, they called it. They're trying to do the thing where they can get a bunch of Kickstarters going so that they can.
Oh.
When they finally get the expansion, they also have a couple other games that are coming from them. They want to be able to do them all at once. And I know they're trying to just do like quick little Kickstarters to be able to make that happen. But I did back that one for the expansion. So I know most of the clans are available on Tabletop Simulator to be able to play, and I told a couple of my local friends, so I should hopefully be able to get a couple games into that pretty soon.
Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. I haven't played it yet, but I've heard phenomenal things about it. And since it's been out of print, it's like, oh man, getting a copy is
Yeah.
Harder than getting TrickTalkers, actually.
Yeah, which is surprising. But I mean, in the board game hobby, just in general, that kind of happens. A lot of games ebb and flow with availability, and you just never know what game. That's that's a big thing, and that's kind of a whole conversation we could spend many a time on. So I don't want to do that.
Yeah, but I need to get to your number 2 because I asked you for 5. We're still talking about number 1.
True. Okay,
that's my fault though. That's my fault though. Number 2. What's number 2?
Yes. Number 2 would be the Great Zimbabwe.
Oh, great choice.
Yes. So Clans of Caledonia and the Great Zimbabwe always flip-flop for my number 1 game of all time. It honestly depends on which one I've played most recently. We'll sort of determine which is my number 1, but they are both just so good. I will always say yes to them. And the Great Zimbabwe just never disappoints.
An excellent spotter. Excellent spotter.
Yes.
All right. Number 3. These aren't in any order, so you don't have to rate them or anything.
No, that's totally fine. Yeah, of course. Number 3, I'd probably say Marvel Champions.
Oh, okay.
And that's probably because the new stuff just released. The Gambit and Rogue decks are available as of today, and I have a weekly sort of campaign with one of my friends here. Every Thursday, we play Marvel Champions, and we just pull out a new hero and pull out a new villain and just try and get through, and then just kind of rotate that through as we go. And with the new stuff, it's obviously I'm very excited for that, and I never get tired of that game. So always up for a game of Marvel Champions.
Nice. So 2 of the 3 I have not played yet, so I'm excited. I already like this list. It's getting cool because I'll be like, all right, I gotta play this. I gotta play this. All right, number 4.
Great. I think at this point we should probably go into trick taking.
At this point.
Yes, and I think the next one is probably going to be my number 1 trick taking game of all time, which is Schadenfreude.
Oh,
and
all right.
I have a million things to say about this game, but to keep it brief, to keep going through the games, Schadenfreude is just so good because it does so many things all at once in a trick-taking game. While it's not truly an official trick avoidance game, depending on how much you have at your points, you want to avoid tricks. But if you're too low on points, you want to take tricks. So the fact that this game can be a trick-taking and trick avoidance game all in one, but it's variable depending on where you are in the game, is just super neat to me.
I think that if I were to create a list of like 5 games that I think, okay, if it was up to the PGC community of what games PGC would bring next, Schadenfreude would have to be in that top 5. The community just absolutely loves it. And I mean, it's a great game. I have to agree.
Yeah, I mean, not to try and like say anything about what will come in the future, but I'm sure I could easily be convinced to make that one of the next BGC games.
Ooh, Board Game Dojo exclusive breaking news? Huh?
I don't know about that, but maybe. Well, you never know what's going to happen. So, but no,
I don't want somebody else to get it first because I have Schadenfreude and I want to beat them. So,
yes.
And number 5, round out the list for us.
Yeah. So, I want to say Yokai Septet, but I also want to say TrickTalkers.
Well, that is a little bit of cheating. I'm pretty sure that that would be 6.
Yes, but if I was to pick one between the 2, I feel like I'd have to go TrickTalkers.
They are company man.
Yes, obviously PGC helping produce the English version of that game is going to help that. But the fact that that game can play more players is the reason why it might eke out Yokai. Because to me personally, Yokai Septet is a 4-player game. TrickTalkers is a 3 to 5 player game. All player counts work. Sure, some characters might be a little bit better than others, but it always works all player counts.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like you said too, like you guys are bringing games that you absolutely love. So the fact that, makes total sense. All right, so kind of talking about like TrickTalkers specifically, I am so interested in. Like, I completely understand why you would choose it. It's like to bring it, and 535, same thing. But I think the thing that I just can't wrap my head around is what is the process of actually bringing the game here? Is it just a matter of asking the designer, like, hey, do we have permission to reprint this in English? Like, what does that look like? Especially now that, TrickTakers actually has a different version on Kickstarter now as well, I think. It's a slightly different game though, right?
Yeah, so Kings is what is available on Kickstarter right now, which is set within the TrickTakers universe, but is a completely different game.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, if you were to play base TrickTakers and play Kings, you would have a 100% different experience.
Okay, I think that's been some confusion, so I'm happy to hear you say that.
Yeah, no, totally. The characters that exist in the original TrickTakers games still continue to exist in the Kings game. So you might see some similarities and art similarities between them, but how the game plays and overall is very different for sure.
Okay. So then how do you get that game? Like, okay, hey, do you just walk up to the designer of TrickTakers and go, hi, can I make your game in English? Like, what is the process of getting it from there to development and then to people in English?
Yeah, so I guess every game's a little bit different. So to answer for TrickTakers is specific to kind of the whole situation of how that even came about. When TrickTakers itself originally came out, obviously there's a lot of Japanese in that game, let alone the rule book, but also the cards that are required for the characters and everything else. There's a lot that requires translation to another language. And there was probably 6 to 8 months where TrickTakers was available to everybody. And at the point of the PGC Discord, maybe 3 or 4 people owned it, but had never played it. Because again, there was so much to translate. It was a lot to ask for. And me personally, I kept saying, does anybody have the English translations for this? Does anyone have the English translations? Did anybody do the character paste ups? Just constantly trying to ask anybody to figure out, because I didn't own it at this point. And after about 8 months, I just gave up and was like, you know what? I'm going to buy the game myself. And I'm going to do all the translations. I'm going to go through the rule book and go through the characters and do all my own paste ups. And that's where TrickTakers started for PGC. Because at that point, Hirokin, which is the designer of TrickTakers, wasn't really a part of the PGC Discord or kind of any connection with us at that point. But I had done all of the paste ups and all the work for it and started to post it to people and say, hey, this game's now available in English to be able to play. Right. And obviously word got out to Hirokin that was done. And slowly but surely, he eventually joined the PGC Discord. And we made a little thread within the Trick-Taking Games channel of specifically just the TrickTakers game. And he was very active in it. And I was able to sort of help answer questions that people had along with Hirokin, which, to try and keep the story short here, allowed me to then sort of have a direct messaging with Hirokin himself and be like, hey, I'm the one who made the paste ups. I absolutely love this game. It is amazing. I can't stop thinking about it. I want to know more about it. Please give me more information. And then he started to DM me back, and it just kind of sort of slowly snowballed into, hey, can PGC make an official English version of this game? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. I would love that.
Wow. Again, it's just something that's born out of just like you were a little bit curious and you just took it. I mean, yeah. I'm just kind of blown away too. To be honest, I'm kind of always so shy to kind of talk to people, especially like people who has designed a game that I really, really like. I think the Sean Ross, the designer of Haggis, tweeted about our podcast last week.
Yeah.
Or no, he tweeted about our YouTube video that we did last week. And yes, I literally
the combo tracks.
Yeah. And I just responded like, this is a dream. He's like, I'm just a nobody on the internet. What are you talking about? I'm like, oh, I just made that awkward. Awesome. Sweet. Yeah. Never doing that again.
Mm-hmm. No, it's so surreal though, right? Like it's sort of like you want to be a part of it all, and so you want to find a way to like get within contact of them and find a way to do it, but at the same time it just feels so weird and just feels like I don't know, like you're so amazing and so awesome and you make all these games and I'm just a nobody, like how do I do this?
It's like Starstruck, but it's just from like Taiki Shinzawa. We all just like fall over because we don't know how to deal with it.
100%.
So I guess this is a bit off the cuff, but was there a game that actually got you into starting to look into Japan or South Korea for card games, TrickTalkers, whatever it might be? Was there a game that really got you into it?
I think Time Palatrix, which at this point, it has been rethemed as Ghost of Christmas. For most people are probably aware of it from All Play at this point, but that was a Taiki Shinzawa game that when it first came out just like blew me away. I'd been familiar with trick-taking games and had shown a couple to my friends, but most of my gaming group had been the Euro games and Lacerda games, etc. So to experience a game like Time Palatrix and to just see what trick-taking can do was mind-blowing. And it still is, like it's still a great game, and I absolutely love it. And there's certainly a spot in my heart that shows for that game, and I'm glad it got reprinted as Ghost of Christmas, and it's getting more love because it's just a really unique trick-taking game.
Yeah, I think Ghost of Christmas and Cat in the Box, now that it's more available, have been the two that I think I've been hearing more of lately. Whoa, what are these trick-takers that are suddenly coming out? Like, what is going on? I think I've heard both of those come up in other podcasts a lot recently.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I know with a few different people, a few different reviewers have started to say like there's a trick-taking renaissance happening.
What podcast? I think we must have listened to the same one. Was it So Very Wrong About Games? Was that it?
It might have been. And I think Dice Tower said it as well at some point. But like the fact that there's multiple podcasts and multiple like big time reviewers saying it is amazing. I'm so excited that so many more people are starting to get into trick-taking games.
It's definitely great for the community because it gives you a chance to bring in more games like 535 and like, hey, like people come on over, like take a look.
Yeah. So Sail, which is a retheme of Hamlin Cave, was the #1 hotness on BGG about a week or two ago at this point, and it's still like within the top 10 of hotness, and like it's just getting so much buzz. A lot of people are looking at it, and it's amazing. The fact that a trick-taking game can be on a lot of people's lists of games to look out for, when normally a lot of trick-taking games that are just so good but keep getting sort of pushed to the side are getting missed. It's so great to be able to see a lot of these games coming to the main public in the board gaming hobby.
Wow. Yeah, another one. I forgot about Sail actually, because I'm like trying to forget about it because like my wallet cannot afford to keep like getting excited about all these new games.
Oh yeah.
With all these new games that are coming, what is, in your experience, the biggest difficulty, the most difficult thing of developing games? So, I mean, you said you worked on the print and play for Bridge City Poker. You helped in the development for 535, and now you kind of have done. You started with the paste ups, and now you're working on TrickTalkers. What is the most difficult thing of developing a game like that and really getting it to retail for everybody to enjoy? Because it can't be an easy process for sure.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the hardest part is just translations. Coming from Japanese to English, me personally, I don't know Japanese at all. So any amount of translation I'm doing is required from Google Lens or DeepL or any one of the translation sites that I can use. And because Japanese to English isn't always the best translation. Like it's a hard language. I mean, English in general is a hard language. And I can only imagine Japanese just from the characters and and all the different things must also be a hard language. So two hard languages trying to translate to each other is just a disaster asking, to be made. So any kind of development comes from that. I know, and this is sort of going on another little mini tangent here, but
no worries.
Yeah, rules in the board gaming world in general is always a hot topic. They're like, oh, you got this rule wrong. The game would have played completely different if we had done it the right way or whatever. I can't believe you messed the rules up, whatever. Like, it's always a thing to make sure you get the rules right whenever you play a game. And for me personally, I just want to make sure everyone has fun. As long as you are enjoying the game, if you got a couple rules wrong, that's fine. You now know the new rule, play with it that way. But as long as everyone enjoys it, that's okay. And with these card games, trick-taking games and everything, the rule set is usually so small that if you get one of those rules wrong, it's a big difference in how the game plays. So making sure that the rules are written correctly, and again, development here with the English rules, making sure that the translation is correct, is always a big task, because you want to make sure that everybody who's getting this game plays it to the best ability they can the first time through. Because again, if the rules are a little ambiguous, it can cause chaos.
Sure. I mean, yeah, you don't think about like how, for these big grandiose games, you have these little small things, but like even for 5-3-5, if you just like mistranslate or forget the rule of like, you can only play 3 cards. And so suddenly somebody's trying to play all 4 sevens at the same time. It's like, whoa, you can't do that. But if you miss that, it could fundamentally change the outlook of the game.
Yeah.
So let's get back to knowing you as also a little bit. We're going to step away from board games for a second, because you do live in the great city of Pittsburgh. I can say that because that's where I went to elementary school. We were actually not too far away. You're about 20 minutes from where I was, where I was a kid. What are 3 things in Pittsburgh that people should do? Because besides eating things with Heinz ketchup on everything.
Yes. I think Heinz ketchup and pierogies are probably the 2 things you should.
You could put ketchup on your pierogies, and then you're a true Pittsburgher.
100%. And toss some fries on it, and you're golden.
Done.
Yes. Well, I think one of the things, if you're coming to Pittsburgh,
now that we've offended everybody from Pittsburgh.
Yeah, right? Just say yins and you're fine.
Oh, no.
But no, I feel like one of the places I would, if somebody came to visit me and was like, hey, I'm only here for the weekend, where do you want to take me? I would probably say going to the Phipps Conservatory is a beautiful place to go to. So Phipps Conservatory is plants and flowers and stuff like that. It's just a really big garden or greenhouse, I guess, because it's inside and outside. You can go depending on the time of the year you're here when you can visit. But the inside part is always available no matter the time of the year. And they'll do different types of things, and they'll have different showcases or whatever it might be. So no matter when you go, it's always a great time. So I think that's probably one place I would certainly shout out. As far as 2 other places, I mean, I feel like board game related, I got to keep with it. I'd probably say check out my local game store, Games Unlimited.
Well, they're pretty limited. They don't have some TrickTalkers, so I don't know.
That's true. Yeah.
That was a bad joke. I'm sorry. Don't encourage me to do that.
No, that's fine. So they, for the longest time, used to be in a very small, kind of dark and dingy space, which, to be frank, was never really inviting. It felt like you had to be one of those like people in the hobby to be invited in there. It's just kind of the way the space was, unfortunately. Nothing against them, it's just where they were, because it was from like the 1980s when it was originally, from that location. So it just hadn't been upgraded. But right before the pandemic, they moved to a new location, like 2019, and the new space is amazing. It's so bright, it's so big. It's like 6 times bigger. And I'm not exaggerating. Like it's a 3-floor story building where the first floor is probably 3 times bigger than their original store. And the fact that there's 2 more floors on top of that, just it's massive. And yeah, so obviously a lot more space means a lot more availability for different types of games and different types of things that they can start offering. So the availability of things they've started to be able to give to consumers has just grown, and they're continuing to grow and eventually trying to open up space for people to play in. So hopefully by next year, they'll have an actual gaming area. So anyone who visits the Pittsburgh area can just play games there, which would be great. I don't travel a lot. So like the fact that I've been able to get 2 answers is big, because I always like to just stay home. So
right, I mean, for your third, you can just give an interesting Pittsburgh fact or something that or a restaurant that you enjoy there. Because you got to eat if you go to a city, right?
It's true. Yeah. I mean, Pittsburgh actually has a lot of good food in general, like just all types. Like, usually cities are like, oh, we have great pizza and that's it. Like pizza is our main staple, or Chinese is our main staple. I feel like Pittsburgh just has everything. Any type of food, you come here for the type of food, you're going to find a good place. So any type of restaurant you come for would be good. But obviously, as I had mentioned earlier, the pierogies is sort of a Pittsburgh staple. So if you come to Pittsburgh, I would recommend trying to find a location that makes pierogies. And probably personally, one of my favorite places is Butter Joint.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, Butter Joint, which used to be Butter Joint and Legume. Legume is no longer a place, it's now just Butter Joint. Has a pierogi dish that is fantastic. So if you ever come into Pittsburgh, go to Butter Joint and try the pierogies.
All right. Oh, I'm definitely going to do that because I love me some pierogies. Like as a kid, I was so excited when it was pierogi night. Was like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever go to Pittsburgh Pirates game when they had the pierogi base?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. Around the outfield, it was like the bacon and cheddar versus the like. Oh yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh man, that's a memory I haven't like accessed in a very long time. And it's in the back of my head. It's like the vaguest memory. I'm just like, were there people dressed up as pierogies and mascots running around the outfield?
Yeah.
Is that a memory I have stored?
Yes. No, certainly. I want to say Mary, but that's not right. But though she had like a little purse. It's the purse that she'd carry with a little earring, and she'd always like swing and whack people with the purse.
Oh man, I feel like I'm like in a movie where they just like whoosh, and you're just seeing the montage in their head come back. Wow. Yeah. Oh man, because I haven't been to the like PNC Park since like Jason Kendall played.
Oh wow, that's a while.
That's a while. Like I said, I was there like as a kid. But all right, I got to move on because I don't want to keep you here all night. I mean, like I can talk to you all night. You're a great guest, so please don't think that way.
Oh, I appreciate it.
So all right. I definitely have like a few questions I want to get, and I'm like trying to decide which ones I want to ask you. I think we're gonna finish the 5-3-5 game of just like saying. So we've talked a lot about like okay, Ghost of Christmas and Cat in the Box are definitely these interesting games. TrickTalkers like is a game you can't stop thinking about. Are there 5 games that you just think people should try? And it can be, for reasons of it's just an excellent game, like Clans of Caledonia that you were talking about earlier, or it could just be like it gives you an experience that no other game is just so wholly unique to it.
Yeah. Ooh. So I feel like I want to start out with Nana on that. I know you've made a video about it, so I know how you feel about that game. Yeah. So Nana is one of those games where on paper, if you just read the rules, it sounds boring. It sounds like it's not a game. There's nothing to it. But once you actually start to play it, oh boy, there is just so much to the game. There's so many laughs that come from it. Any non-gamer or gamer is going to enjoy this game. And I know that's a bold statement to say any, because obviously not every game.
Hey, we're making bold statements.
We are.
Don't worry, I'm just going to tweet at you and say, this is what he said.
Yeah. But I just feel like 95% of people who play Nana are going to enjoy that game. Because yes, it's a memory game and it requires you to remember things. And most of the time people say, oh, my memory's terrible, I can't remember anything. That's what makes it so good. You don't actually need to have a good memory because there's just so much laughs that come from it. Because if you do remember where cards are, great. Everybody's excited that you remembered where things are. But if you don't, it's hilarious when you get so like confident of going, oh, I remember, you've got the one. Eric, show me your lowest. And it's a 2. And you're like, oh, and everyone's like, no, that's not where the 1 was. And it's just such a great game no matter what.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that was aggressive start. So to continue off of that.
Yeah,
sure. Oh, so 4 others. Let's see. I feel like I got to plug another PGC game, which has got to be Bridge City Poker. And I think this is one that people have to try just because this is what got me into PGC.
Okay.
This is a game.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. It does such a great job at introducing people to trick taking and climbing games, which I know that alone is like a topic. Trick taking and climbing games are so separate from each other. When people start to say, well, what do those mean? People can get very one-sided about how that works. And the fact that Bridge City Poker does both of those can help people sort of introduce you to both of those mechanics all in one game. And it's pretty rules light, and it's a little bit more friendly than most climbing games. So I just think it's really great for that.
I agree.
No.
I definitely agree more with you than I did on your number 1. That's for sure.
Next one, I want to say Grinch Grow Your Heart. So Dr. Seuss. Yeah. So this is
excuse me while I look this one up.
Yeah. So it's by Funko Pop, which Funko Pop actually makes really great board games.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. I am very impressed with a lot of the games they make. And so Grinch Grow Your Heart is basically Yahtzee with cards. The idea is you are trying to make a 5-card hand, and every round you're picking one category to score. So maybe it's one of the 4 suits, maybe it's a run, maybe it's all same numbers, whatever it might be. But once you score a category, you can't score it again. And
hence the Yahtzee.
Yeah, the Yahtzee, essentially you pick one thing and then you can't do it again.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, but the way it works is every round, one of you is the Grinch. And every other player is a part of is a Whovillian, essentially. And essentially, if you are the Grinch, you can take cards that the Whovillians discard, but the Whovillians are sort of limited to what they draw from the draw pile. So you're thematically, as the Grinch, trying to steal the stuff that the Whovilles get rid of, trying to make your best hand, whereas the Whovilles are just kind of relying on whatever they're gifted among the town. And it's just great. It plays very quickly. It's very silly. I feel like it's one of those games where like you can play with kids and your family and your grandma or grandpa. That obviously it's holiday themed because it's the Grinch. So it's a little limited to that, but if you can give it to people outside the holidays, it's a great game.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm also saying it for like $7 online. It's just like, I mean, you can't go wrong with that price. All right, you got 2 more.
All right.
And if you can't think of any, I'm not going to be too strict.
Okay, yeah. So next one I want to say is Quirky Circuits. I don't know
if I've heard of this.
Oh, Quirky. So Quirky Circuits is a cooperative. Why am I blanking on? It's
Oh, I've definitely seen this cover with the cat like on what looks like a Roomba.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't even know how else to describe it.
I'm so mad that I can't think of the mechanic right now. But
this is a Nikki Valens game, right?
Yes, it is.
Let's see.
Programming.
Animals.
There we go. Action programming. It's a cooperative action programming game.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's so good. And so there's the original Quirky Circuits, and then there was sort of a standalone expansion that also came out, which is also great. Own both. Absolutely love them. Highly recommend to anybody. And it's so the crew, cooperative trick taking, is kind of where I'm getting to this, the parallel of if you're into the card game scene and you like the crew, Quirky Circuits is a great transition into continuous cooperative card games. It's so good, just the laughs that come from it, because people like, again, the action programming of players playing cards and then trying to go, oh, I know what you did, and then playing these cards on top of it, and then when you reveal it and ends up being horribly wrong, is just so good. But when it works out,
I can imagine
it's even better. Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting one. All right. Because I haven't heard much about it. I've just seen that cover and I was like, what is this?
Yeah. I think it's a sadly underrated game. I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough. And that's why I want to raise awareness to it, because it's so good.
Yeah, it's rated 2,296 on Board Game Geek, so I don't know if it's even a good game at that point. But all right, and number 5.
Number 5.
I don't know how you follow up on that.
I don't know either, but I feel like I want to go dexterity games to kind of like round out all the types of games I'm going with.
What a well-rounded portfolio.
Yeah, and I feel like at that point I want to go flip ships, because I want to go another underrated dexterity game, and I feel like flip ships fits that profile perfectly. There are a lot of good dexterity games out there, don't be wrong, but flip ships is just, I feel like personally, number 1. It's a cooperative dexterity game where you're trying to eliminate all of these aliens and also the mothership. And you're doing it by flipping these little discs onto cards that are laid out on the table on top of this like mothership cardboard thing you set up together. And it's just great because, I mean, most of the time dexterity games, you know, the average person isn't that great at dexterity. Me too. Like, I'm not great at it. I don't know about you, but dexterity can be difficult.
I'm terrible.
Yeah. And so flip ships is just another one of those where, like, if you can be good at it and if you can and mark those ships appropriately, it can be great. There's obviously abilities that are on your ships and you can work together about how to do it. But when you can win in that game, which most of the time cooperative games are always hard to win it, which is a good cooperative game. You know, it should be tough to win. So when you can win, it feels great. And I feel like Flip Ships does that perfectly.
Wow. Yeah, most of those I have never played in for the quickies. I love hearing about this from people. It's just kind of, it's nice to hear games that you don't hear about all the time, where it's like, oh, this is a game that people have missed. You know, oftentimes I'll be like, okay, what's a hidden gem? And it'll be like, The Crew. No.
Yeah.
But I mean, that kind of reminds me, though, Nana always makes me feel bad. I mean, when you said number 1 and then you said Nana, I'm like, I always feel so bad because that was our second video we ever did. And I already knew that so many people loved it. And that's the one that I just like could not. It makes me feel the worst that I don't agree with general consensus, because I do agree with you. I think 95% of people will probably enjoy it. Like, I'm so in that 5% that I'm like, I can't like have a YouTube, like I can't have a YouTube channel, and I'm just like, I don't like it. Is there a game that you feel the same way on? I'm just like, either on the like you love it but everybody else hates it, or you don't like. I wouldn't say I hate Nana. I think it's just okay. But a game that you're like everybody else loves and you just think is okay.
Yeah,
this is for bold.
It is. That's always like it's rough territory when you start to get into those.
It's gonna be the headline of the episode, so you better choose carefully.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tag everybody in the PGC Discord on this one.
The thing is, I have an easy answer for that, though, unfortunately.
Ooh.
And that's Terraforming Mars. And I guess you could sort of slash it with Arc Nova as well.
Whoa.
I don't like those games. Like,
wow.
I think Terraforming Mars is like number 4 overall on BGG, and Ark Nova is like 5 or 6 overall. And it gets so much buzz, it gets so much love. Everybody talks about it. It's like amazing game. It's so good. But I just think it's fine at best. Like I get the hook of the games. I understand the deck and having every card is unique, and everything that everybody does can always be different than another player because of the unique cards. But it's just fine, because like the fact that to make, usually and again my limited plays of it is, it's like you always have to go for a strategy. In like Terraforming Mars specifically, if you want to go something, you always have to get those tags. You have to get the same number of tags to make everything sort of combo with each other. But because every card is different and you're just drawing random cards, sure, you're drafting them, but it's always, luck of the draw, what you get if somebody doesn't hate draft against you. You're so limited to making sure you actually get them that it's like, okay, I want to go Jovian tags, and I get 2 of them in the entire game. Well, my whole entire strategy was ruined. And it's like, I don't know. So that's how I feel about that.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you at all. I think the only way I'd ever play Terraforming Mars is with the Prelude expansion with it. So it speeds up the first part of the game to not 3 hours. For sure. I have Ark Nova sitting in shrink, but I'm worried because a lot of people, and now including you, that I like very much usually agree with their opinions on games, don't like it. And so now I'm like, I really wanted this, but now what do I do?
Yeah. I will say, like, I don't hate games. Like, there are very few games that will absolutely dislike. If there's a game that I don't like, I still admire its design. I can understand what the designer was going for, and I can understand why people like it. If it's not for me, it's not for me. That's fine. But I can understand why people like it. So I still get why people like Terraforming Mars and Ark Nova. But it's still like, when I say that, I also still like, it just confuses me though, because it's just not that good. I don't understand why it's like top rated good.
Yeah, and I wonder if that like makes a difference too, of just like when you say, hey, this is the 4th best board game of all time, and you're just like, I mean, it was fun, but I was expecting number 4 of all time.
Yeah.
And I'd rather play Flip Ships than this if I want to play a space theme game. Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
There's definitely one game I definitely hate, but that's for another time. Then I think, because we were talking about reviews, I think that kind of leads me to the final question that I have for you today, which is that you have an excellent podcast on yourself with TrickTalkers, which we've like tweeted back and forth at each other and stuff. I just want to know, so has having your own podcast changed the way that you look at games? Because now you're kind of in that, okay, you are developing them for PGC, and then you're reviewing, you now know the hard work it takes to kind of do that. And then you have a podcast where you're reviewing and talking about these games. What is the biggest change, or if any?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And honestly, I feel like I haven't thought about that a lot, because to me, doing the podcast was just sort of an additional outlet to something I already love. I love playing these games, and I love talking about them just with my friends that I end up playing them with. So the podcast was just an additional way to continue talking about it. And the fact that anybody listens is amazing. And I'm sure you can probably agree with me on this. Like, whether you have 1 follower or 1,000 followers or 1 million followers, like any amount is great. I love it.
Absolutely.
In fact, that like anybody wants to listen to me talk about games, because like it's so heartwarming. And I feel like now that we're overall like 20 or so episodes in, I will say how I talk about games has absolutely changed. Because at some point you do need to understand that, like, yes, I'm still doing it because I love it and I want to talk about it, but there are people that are listening. Like I do have influence, which sounds weird to say. Like having any influence to anybody.
That's a dangerous thing.
It is, yeah. But like, even if it's, again, just 1 person or 100 people or whatever, like it's still people that want to listen in and might buy a game based on the things that I say. And because of that, yeah, exactly. and like that is really important to always keep in mind, because while it's really easy to gush about games that you love, and I know I do this all the time. If there's a game I love, I will nonstop talk about it. And as this interview has gone today, and our discussion, if I'm talking about something, I'll just keep going, and it's hard to get me to stop. So whenever somebody talks about stuff like that, and in our podcast, if we pick a game that I love, I always have to make sure to be understanding of, like, it's not always for everybody. And I need to make sure that I kind of get that point across. And if it's a game that I don't love, it's still a game that other people might love. And I get that. So I want to make sure that I get both sides of the story as I talk about the games.
For sure. I mean, I enjoy listening to that, though. I mean, those are the people I want to listen to. I mean, of course, there is definitely a spot in a needed spot for people who are heavily critiqueful or heavily critiquing, very cynical about gaming. Like I definitely get the necessity of having those, but it's just nice sometimes to just turn on a podcast and it's just people who absolutely just love games and love talking about them. And for the listeners, if you want to listen to Ryan and his co-host gush about games nonstop, I do recommend TrickTalkers. I'll put the link in the description below. You can also talk to him and everybody else who loves TrickTalkers, it seems like, or everybody that likes TrickTakers, I should say. My goodness. On the PGC Discord. Yeah, on the PGC Discord. I'll put the link to that as well below. But I think that is going to wrap it up for today. Arigatou gozaimashita. And thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here. And obviously, I love everything you do. So I love listening to this. I'm sure I'll listen to this over again. And obviously, everything you do continuing going forward.
じゃあねー。